Now, this is messed up, right? It turns out that the global economy is in the hole for a whopping $305 trillion. Can you believe that? In just the first quarter alone, it swelled by a mind-boggling $8.3 trillion. Bigger than economies of a lot of countries. The Institute of International Finance is sounding the alarm, calling it a crisis of adaptation. Why? Well, think of it as this huge global debt servicing machinery that's getting tighter and tighter with every new monetary policy the central banks come up with. I mean, someone's got to give, right? I mean, just look at what's happening in the United States, right? Sure, Biden, McCarthy, and all those Washington politicians negotiated the U.S. debt ceiling, but really, there's a much bigger problem at the root of all this. Billionaire investor and entrepreneur Ray Dalio, he's explaining it perfectly right here.
The debt ceiling negotiations is ridiculous because it is not dealing with the problem. Look, there's a problem if you pass the debt ceiling increase again, because we're just going to keep piling on the debt. And there's a problem if you don't pass the debt ceiling increase, because what that's going to mean is you either, what does that mean, a default, or you're going to cut expenditures of unnecessary expenditures, particularly people who can't afford it. The problem is that we're spending more than we're earning, and it doesn't have to be that way, that we can do the restructuring. If we don't fix that, we are going to have a debt crisis problem and social problem that's going to cost us dearly. It'll cost us our system as we know it.
So basically, nothing's been fixed since 2008. Everything's still been running on these huge machineries of debt, and now the piper is at the door expecting payment. Finance experts and corporate executives, they're throwing around words like underbanked households, but really they're just euphemisms for the poor and those getting poorer by the day thanks to what Washington's been doing. Now, speaking of, more debt-related drama in Washington. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, she found herself in the hot seat as Republicans grilled her about the debt ceiling brinkmanship. And it was her first Congress hearing since President Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck a deal. So what's their main concern, right? The lack of clarity around when the debt ceiling will be breached, also known as the X date. So Yellen's really in for it this time. Mainstream media wants you to think that the debt ceiling crisis was solved with the whole debt ceiling deal, but really, they failed to address the impact that this could have on the U.S. economy. Spoiler alert, it's not good news. I mean, just the fact that we're even talking about potentially defaulting on our debt makes lenders nervous. They start demanding higher interest rates to compensate for the risk. And you know who's going to end up ultimately paying for that, right? Yes, taxpayers like me and you. It's a game of brinkmanship that just keeps playing out and the cost keeps adding up. So what do you guys think? Do you feel like the government's prioritizing the American people or themselves in the midst of all this? Drop me your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. But hey, that's why you have me right here, right? In this video, we're not only going to be dissecting the current state of the global debt, but we're also going to be exploring strategies on how to safeguard your personal finances in the face of the financial crisis. And I got the very best expert insights and tips on how to navigate these uncertain times, protecting your hard-earned money, moving toward that financial freedom goal. All right. Let's go ahead and jump right into this, guys. Also, for the very best way to invest in gold or silver, make sure to check out the links in the description down below of this video. So the very official sounding Institute of International Finance is ringing all sorts of alarm bells with the global debt growing by $8.3 trillion in the first quarter to a near record high of $305 trillion. Now, they're calling it a crisis of adaptation to rapid monetary policy tightening by central banks. This finance industry body said that the combination of such high debt levels and the rising interest rates has driven up the cost of servicing that debt, triggering concerns about leverage in the financial system. Translation? The whole global economy could very well implode because countries just can't keep up with their debt anymore. So sky high inflation and the 5.25% federal interest rates, it just pretty much brings the whole thing back to August 2007. And you guys know what happened then, right? Now, according to the IIF's quarterly global debt monitor report, quote, with financial conditions at their most restrictive levels since the 2008-2009 financial crisis, a credit crunch would prompt higher debt rates and result in more zombie firms, already approaching an estimated 14% of U.S. listed firms, end quote. Zombie firms? Well, yeah, these are companies that need bailouts in order to operate, or an indebted company that is able to repay the interest on its debts, but not repay the principal. You remember the recent regional bank failures, right? So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, she already warned that more of those are probably on the horizon and that the banking consolidation could move even faster. All right, guys. Now, already shares of the U.S. regional lenders have fallen after Yellen told the bank chief executives that even more mergers may be necessary following a series of bank failures. More on Yellen and her debt default X date, guys. They're blaming everybody but themselves for this uncontrollable debt spiral that we're in. Aging populations, rising healthcare costs, and substantial climate finance gap. Plus, governments are spending more and more money on their defense because they're worried about what's going on in the world. According to this, that could potentially affect the credit profile of both government and corporate borrowers, meaning it'll be tougher for both the United States and regular people to borrow money, i.e. get a credit card or a mortgage. Yeah. They said it here, quote, given the role of regional banks in credit intermediation in the U.S., worries about their liquidity positions could result in a sharp contraction in lending to some segments, including underbanked households and businesses, end quote. See, there's that phrase again, guys, underbanked households. So in other words, they may freeze credit cards and loans to Americans if this kind of reckless government borrowing continues. Now, they also talked about the zombie firms, companies with earnings that are just enough to allow them to continue operating and pay the interest on their debt, but not enough to pay off the debt, meaning any cash generated is immediately spent on debt. The company is therefore neither dead or alive. So right now, their estimate says, quote, that around 14% of U.S. companies can be considered zombie companies, with a substantial portion of these in the healthcare and information technology sectors, end quote. Now, do you honestly think that our economy can survive being this financial wasteland that just has zombie companies working off of debt? Yeah, a debt crisis is more likely. I mean, day by day, it's getting harder and harder to believe that we're not in a recession. Now, if they do eventually say that, hey, we're in a recession, you can bet it'll feel more like a depression for regular people. Plus, the large banks are going to go from too big to fail to too big to save. You know what I mean? Drop me a quick amen in the comments, guys. All right, so Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen got grilled by Republicans over her role in the debt ceiling brinkmanship in her first hearing since the deal was struck between President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Representative Ralph Norman, he laid out the scenario, quote, the debt limit moved from June 1st to June 5th and maybe in July. And we had a president who was missing in action for over 100 days and didn't want to negotiate. Did you not get this administration to move the dates to ramp up the pressure? End quote. And of course, Yellen gave an unambiguous no. But you got to look at the timeline to ask the question here. In early May, Yellen told lawmakers the United States will run out of funds in early June. And as soon as June 1st, in line with the warnings that she had issued in previous months. On May 26th, she issued a more specific X date of June 5th. Biden and McCarthy ultimately reached a deal on May 28th, which was passed on a bipartisan note in the House on May 31st and the Senate on June 1st. House Financial Services Committee Vice Chair French Hill, he wasn't happy with Janet Yellen's lack of transparency, saying, quote, at the end of February, Chairman Patrick McHenry wrote you requesting information and your projections and calculations. Simple enough. The response was lacking, to put it mildly, end quote. Now, according to him, Congress did not receive any communication from Yellen until May 1st, which he noted was after the House GOP passed its initial debt ceiling bill on April 26. Soon after, two different X dates were released with zero explanation and zero transparency. Now, I don't know if these are just our lawmakers continuing their blame game, but really what matters to me in the financial markets is really the fact that they just keep towing this line with this whole debt ceiling thing. Yellen emphasized that waiting until the deadline to agree to raise the debt ceiling, it hurt the country's credit rating in 2011, and that currently one rating agency has put the United States on the negative credit watch list. As she said here, this cannot be normalized as the way we do business in Washington. Waiting until the last minute hurts our global leadership and credibility on the world stage. We are a nation that keeps our word and pays our bills, and we should never give anyone any reason to think otherwise. And I gotta admit, she got a point here. So the debt ceiling deal that was passed last week poses new challenges for the economy. One economist, Betsy Stevenson, she served on the Council of Economic Advisors during the Obama administration and now teaches at the University of Michigan. So she talked about the lingering effects from the debt ceiling brinkmanship that we saw in Washington. Here's how she broke it down. So a lot of people in the financial markets are looking at what's happening and they're they're saying, I don't want to be holding treasury bills that are going to come due right around the time that the debt ceiling gets breached. And, it may even be that demand all along the sort of what they call the yield curve could be impacted. There are studies from the 2011 brinkmanship that showed that basically we just paid more for our debt because of the fact that there was this new potential threat, end quote. And then, of course, there's the effect on regular working class Americans and how this is going to be a headache for years, maybe even decades to come. Quote, all of these things start to have a potential impact and cost to taxpayers in terms of servicing the debt. But I think if you really want to think about what is the biggest cost of this brinkmanship, it's that it's a repeated game. I feel pretty confident that everybody in Congress now knows that this is a game worth playing. You get something for it. The Republicans got something. So I think we're going to see brinkmanship go on and on and on because we now know that this is a valuable leverage that can be used to negotiate, end quote. Now, speaking of debt, wait until student loans kick in for all those who had no payments for over 2 years, right? Everything has gone up. Food, loans, utilities, insurance, mortgage payments, property taxes, you name it, right? Cell phone bills probably. Every time they attempt to stimulate the economy, the effects become weaker. So let's take 2008 as an example. So back then, they issued around $1 trillion in stimulus and bailouts for the banks, right? But since 2020, they've increased the debt by roughly $10 trillion. And guess what? They're still barely avoiding an official recession. This should make it very clear that the economy is far from strong despite what they're claiming. It's like a house of cards, and it's only a matter of time before it just all comes crashing down. So yeah, as much as possible, I advise everybody to concentrate on making a dent on your personal debt. I mean, the whole world's in debt, so it can make a real huge difference to your life, your family, and your sanity if you and your family got clear of that hole that the government's digging for us. By reducing our debt, we're essentially creating a safety net for ourselves. Think about it. If we have less debt hanging over our heads, then we have more financial flexibility and a greater ability to weather any storm that comes our way. I mean, just think about how much extra money you would have if you didn't have any debt payments to make. Imagine if you were debt-free, no mortgage, no car payment, no credit card debts, no student loans. You'd probably feel pretty dang rich. How many of you guys want to become debt-free? Reducing debt also means lowering our financial obligations. When we're carrying a lot of debt, we have monthly payments and interest expenses that eat away at our income. By paying down our debt, you free up more money in your budget. Then you can use it for other things that truly matter for your financial freedom, like saving for emergencies, investing, pursuing your own personal goals and dreams, maybe taking a vacation or two. Not to mention, it improves your credit score, which of course opens up all sorts of doors for better borrowing opportunities in the future, like getting a mortgage for a home or securing a loan for a business venture. That could potentially net you additional income streams for sure. Yeah, I know it's hard given how our government seems to be screwing us every chance they get, but hey, it definitely beats the alternative, right? And you know I'm always here to help, guys. Just keep dropping those questions and requests for future content in the comment section down below. I'm gonna make sure to go through all those comments right after this video. But crap, man, we definitely covered a lot of ground in today's video, diving into different topics like global debt, the importance of reducing personal debt during uncertain times, and the impact of our financial well-being. I hope you're getting your daily dose of financial education, you guys. You know, taking control of your financial lives starts with understanding the economic landscape and how it affects us on an individual level. That way we can make the most informed and smartest choices during these uncertain times. Now, if you want to keep exploring the world of personal finance and learn more about building wealth, managing debt, and achieving financial freedom, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on. Right now, you should see 2 videos above my head right here and right here. Go ahead and click on those videos. Check those out right now. Definitely appreciate you guys hanging out with me today, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Y'all be safe.